I'm really excited to welcome you all to our very first workshop, Artists Helping Artists, Contracts for Creatives. We've partnered with two amazing women that will be presenting this evening. First up is Sonia Davis Gutierrez. Today she practices and teaches graphic design, web design, and design business in her roles as principal of 3C21 Design and founder and president of New Design School. Debby Winters started her career in science and then turned to law, graduating from the University of Arkansas Law School. Her legal practice primarily focuses on corporate law and intellectual property law. So we're really excited to have these two with us this evening. And with that being said, please help me welcome Sonia Davis Gutierrez.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lauren. We are really excited that so many of you are here today. We really want this to be something that is giving constantly to the community and partnering with Artists Helping Artists through New Design School to kind of share all the business resources that we teach our students and kind of expand that outlook to all artists and all creatives, because it's very similar, so we kind of want to think about that large scope. I met Debby at the NWA Tech Conference. I guess that was maybe 2 years ago. And Debby and I, she attended one of my workshops there on branding. And I thought, man, this is a really cool attorney. She's coming to learn about art. And so we connected that way. And also we have a networking group that we're also in. So I encourage you to get out and go to conferences in Fayetteville and that region. There's so many really great conferences. And also to attend networking groups and find those. So the format for this is that, I teach contracts for designers every fall, and I use it every term. And we have real clients that come in every term, and the students are taught to work with that client with a real contract. So I have that I use. But we did get sample musician contracts, performer contracts, and a corporate gallery contract. My husband, Mike Davis, has experience with small gallery contracts as well. So I think at the end of this, at some point, you'll get an email. Hopefully we have your contact information that has everything. So you'll get this presentation and all the sample contracts. So I would encourage you to mostly kind of think about like how your creative thing that you do applies as I'm talking, and don't worry so much about taking notes about the specific things on the slides, because you'll get that. But like as you're watching it, kind of brainstorm what you need in your contract. Like I definitely need that, or you know what, I need this, or I have this need. So kind of think about it like that. And then Debby, as I'm talking, Debby, I want to kind of ask her questions. This first presentation I've done this several times. And I found two presentations, and I couldn't really figure out how to like mesh them together. The first one's just a quick overview. So, and then the second one's kind of more detailed, just specifically about graphic design, but then we can point out what the similarities to general contracts are. So, in this presentation, I had put together this analogy of swimming in deep water. When you're talking about getting your contract together, that means somebody's gonna pay you. Yes. And okay, and so this is why this is important. I mean, we're talking about contracts, but it's because you're gonna have a transaction, a business transaction. So my recommendation is that you're gonna get that estimate, and you need to think about that as your mask. Then you're going to write it all down. It's going to be very clear. It's going to be your air tank, the contract. And then exhibits, which it sounds very technical, but it's just another document that goes with the contract that states more detail. It's not required. It's only if you feel that you need it. And I'll explain why I use it. And then change order, I call those the fins, because they change direction, okay? Change order just meaning that, okay, we were going this direction, now it seems like we're gonna go off the contract and we're gonna go this direction. Absolutely, happy to do that for you, Client B. I would love to do that. I'm going to give you a change order. I'm thinking that's going to take another 3 to 6 hours. Let's fill that out. Do you agree to this time and this money? And you send that off, okay? So that's what that is. So you know, you can't really talk about just this by itself. I mean, there's also a lot of other related things, but that's how that's all connected. Any thoughts or questions or?
No, I think you're right. You've got your basic part of your contract and then the extra parts that go with it, like the exhibits. And like Sonia said, you don't have to have exhibits, but it's an easy way to make changes specific to that client or that customer, so that if there's something in your contract you want to keep, you know, general, you can put the specifics in the exhibits.
Exactly, and that's what I do, and that's how I train the students to do it as well. And as you'll find out with all of this, this whole thing, it's as creative as you want it to be. There's no this one way, okay? So you have to make it work for what you do and make sure it's like clear and feeling good for you. Okay, so the estimate part, the money, okay? When you're listening to them, I recommend that you write everything down, and it's all in email, and there's a paper trail, and you have it super clear. Okay, what did you hear? I tell the students, make bullets. I understand that you need a logo for a corporate name company called Business X. You would like for this to be professional, fun, creative. You would like da-da-da. Okay, so just like 6 or 8, 10, 12 bullets. Okay, you're going to use that later in your contract. Okay, so really good notes. Obviously, you have a lot more detailed scribbly notes I do in my sketchbook. Okay, but just the summary of what's the main points. Then give them your rate, put the number, and tell them you want half up front. Half up front is a standard for graphic design. I don't really know for other things. So whatever your standard for your industry is, that's fine, but do whatever works for you. If you want the whole thing up front, you say $2,000 up front. That's it. I actually have a thing, Mike always laughs because there are times where some kind of crazy people walk in the door. I mean, really crazy people. It's only happened really twice. And I was like, $20,000 up front. And they're just like, well, you know. So there's ways that you can use that up front. I mean, I don't know. Any thoughts on that? I mean, in any of that?
It's easier to get the money up front than have to collect later.
True.
So I kind of break it down for students that you've got these 5 W's plus the sign and the date. Okay, obviously all contracts you need to sign and you need to date. And both the parties need to sign and the date. Okay, so who's involved? And we'll go more detailed about that. What if? What if we don't finish this project? What if you pay me 2 months later? What if, what ifs? When do I get paid? Where do I find you? And that includes me too. Where are we going to find each other? What's our contact information? Why are we doing all this? What's the description of this whole project? Sign and date. That's really the basics. Like, if you can put this in one page, you can make a contract. You can put this in an email. Minimally do that for yourself, for all of us. It would be so awesome. On my exhibits, I have the specifics of that project. Because on the contract, I basically just switch out names, the cost, and my primary contact. Those are the 3 things that we teach at New Design School. So you're not like changing all the stuff every single time. And I actually have it in Google Docs, and I have it highlighted for the students. Like, change this, change this, change this. The footer, change whoever's your client. Super easy. I also include a schedule. Again, I know how we all work. We all work totally different. But you have to think, this contract is not just for you, it's for them too. And so it's helping both of you feel confident about this agreement you're entering to. The first thing I always think of, like with people who are entering contracts with creative people, they're like, I don't know, maybe it'll come in like 3 years. I have no idea. No, be business. Give yourself some structure and say, I'm going to do my best to phase 1. And I call phases weeks. So it's pretty loose, Week 1, version 1. Week 1, research. Week 2, version 1. Week 3, we're going to change that a little bit. Week 4, we'll have it done. Okay, so that's a month to get a project done. If they don't like that, they want it in 3 days. I'm not your girl. So you have to set your boundaries, or else people will just whoosh. So you have to let them know what you want. And then when you're going to deliver. I try to put that in there because it helps me to structure. And then I go in my calendar and I work backwards.
I'd just say that the more specific terms that you can have in your contracts, the more enforceable they are. So if I always tell clients, if you live in a perfect world, you don't need to have a contract, but we don't live in a perfect world. And you might love this person today, but you might not tomorrow. So the more specific terms you can get in there, then if you have to go before a judge or somebody that's going to negotiate what's going to happen between you, they know exactly what the two parties intended.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, change order. So I mentioned this. This is when we're going to fin to the new direction. Oh, you know what? Let's explore this area over here. Okay, great, sure. No problem. We're going to go back to the 5 W's. Who's doing this? How much does it cost? When are we going to get paid? All of those things from the original. What was the old cost? Okay, we're at 2,000. With this new direction, we're going to 2,500. Okay, that's the new cost. Sign and date. They agree, you agree. A lot of times, because we're so digital, I actually, in my emails, I'll put, if you agree to this, you can say this in an email. You can say, I agree to the attachment. Is that good enough? Or should I really get them to sign the piece of paper? Because it depends on how fast we're moving.
I would say if, you've got the terms laid out, that it probably is. Any good attorney's not going to tell you yes. Right. They're going to tell you it depends. In Arkansas, oral contracts are enforceable if you can, but they're harder to prove than written contracts. So if they're, you're saying, well, I'll get it to you in a week or two, and then they want it in a week, but you said a week or two, but if you say like a date, I'll have it by this day or something like that, and then that's more enforceable. Because it's more concrete.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that little piece, quick overview presentation. Okay, don't be shark bait. Has everybody watched Nemo? Okay, you have to watch Nemo. Don't be shark bait. So that's that information. So that's just a quick overview. Let me switch my presentation here. Any general questions that you're just dying to ask Debbie or me? I'm going to go into detail about the graphic design contract. Anybody have any major questions?
Well, I was thinking about what if you have some emergency coming up and you don't meet your deadline? Is there something you can put in there?
Do you want to talk? I can talk about it. Okay. Yeah, if I'm getting close to the deadline, and the same thing goes with money. So if they have a budget or money, I'll send them an email. I'm watching all this stuff really closely. I know if I'm halfway through and I'm supposed to have it done tomorrow. So you know that about your work. So all you have to say is, you know what? We're about halfway where we really need to be. And most of the time, it is not your fault. They just kept sending you all this stuff. They were in LA and the Caribbean. And then we need it now. Now we need to get it. By the way, here's all my 12 images for my website. Can we launch it tomorrow? No, we cannot launch it tomorrow. You just gave me the images today. So, you know, I would recommend anytime you feel like you're starting to get close to that deadline, write it down. Hi, hey, you know what? We just got those images. It looks like we're going to be pushing out a week because I actually needed to receive that day one. And this is in the contract. You'll see it. Number 1, week phase 1, all equity must be received. That means text, images, all the information. So if they're not getting it to me until week 3 or 4, it's not, they are breaking the contract. So they kind of, I really personally don't have any issues with it because this is real life. I mean, you're busy, we're busy. So they're like, oh yeah, it's fine, no problem. They're not stressing out about it. If it's a super hard deadline, usually they're working really hard to get me stuff. So that's kind of what I do. And I don't do a change order on the time. I just send them an email like, you know, this is going to push this out about a week.
Yeah, I think you can make changes as you go along. But like Sonia said, so they have responsibilities too. If you're not making your deadline just because you decided to go on vacation or something and you didn't tell them, that's a different story. But if they haven't gotten to you what they're supposed to, then you know all the days are going to be moved out, and you can even put a sentence in the contract that says, you know, if the person, that person, whatever you're calling them, doesn't meet these dates, then of course, you know, all the dates can be changed.
They get shifted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everything must happen in the schedule. That's why I make a schedule, because there's stuff that they have to do and the stuff that I have to do. Yes.
I think he was curious about if there was an emergency that you had and you weren't able to make it. Say, for example, a hospitalization.
Oh, yeah.
Things like that.
I mean, I personally haven't had that situation, but I think it's a real situation. If you have an emergency, I mean, I recommend as soon as you can, you tell them, you call them, and have your family member, your closest friend call and say, you know, Tony's not doing well, he's in the hospital, you know, and it's going to be, you're going to have to figure out what to do. I mean, hopefully it's not a hard deadline and they can wait. But I think it's a case by case. How seriously ill are you? If they're going to have to go to another designer, you know, because it's their business still has to move forward. But that's a good actual term to have in your contract. I mean, I don't have anything like that, but that's a good term to include.
Yeah, there's a called force majeure that says that some people put in their contracts. They're not always in them. That says acts of God, weather, things like that. That neither party is responsible. But in the case of an illness, you know, usually you don't, like Sonia said, you don't have, you know, such hard deadlines like it has to be done by August 26th. And if you do, then you know ahead of time so you can say, or they're flexible enough at the last minute if somebody gets ill or something. So it kind of depends, you know, what the situation is, but I would definitely let the other person know.
Yeah, communication, just communication. That's really the basis of it. Hey, yeah.
If someone approaches you with a contract, you know, wanting your services, and the contract's pretty bland, you know, doesn't have a lot of information, doesn't go into specifics, could you consider that kind of like a red flag from the get-go, saying, whoa, you know, maybe I need to do a little more research about this person, you know?
I do want to repeat the question because I just realized we are recording this, so
Yes, if you can hold further questions, there will be a Q&A after.
we'll do a Q&A too. But I did ask for questions, it's my fault. Basically, if you receive a contract and you don't feel good about it, then all contracts are negotiable. What I would do is I would take that contract, copy and paste my contract, send it back. I mean, you'd use what's comfortable for you. And if it's not negotiable, and they just say it's not negotiable, and then you just say, okay, well, you're going to have to find another creative person to do that because I'm not signing that. It's supposed to make you feel good. That's why it's the idea of being confident, feeling confident. Otherwise, you know, you're putting yourself out there. It's too scary.
I think in that situation, it kind of depends. You know, you guys have all different areas of expertise. Some of you might be artists, some are designers, some are performers. So if you're a performer and something like the Walton Arts Center wants to hire you, or for some, concert, do some kind of concert or something, they may not negotiate the contract with you. These are our terms, and if you're not willing to, because they're putting on a thing and they can't negotiate with everybody, and if you're not willing to meet our terms, if there's real non-specific, then that's different. But if they have certain terms, you have to be set up by this time, and those are the things they have to do in order for it to the whole thing to work. Then you can't negotiate with them, or if it's a big gallery, you might not be able to negotiate terms with them like you can a smaller gallery, kind of for the same reason. But you certainly can try. You certainly can say, how about this? Here's my contract. Can we kind of meld these two together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this specific presentation that I've switched to now, this is the one that I use when I teach. It's usually like a 4-hour thing. So I'm not going to go in this detail. I'm only going to hit the part that I feel is that has a similarity to all contracts. But I'll go through it quickly, and again, you're going to get this in an email, so don't feel like it's like I'm just kind of running through it, which I am, because I really want to leave questions for you guys to ask Debbie that way, because we have a really great opportunity here with an attorney. This is super awesome. Okay, so I don't want to go on and on. Okay, so real important at the beginning, this is in all contracts, definitions. Must define. So you got to put the date, the client. I think we all call them clients. We might call them venue. I don't know. So there's some kind of words, some vocabulary that's different for you. And then I put designer/artist/performer. So like on my contract, I put designer. I define the designer as 3C21 design. So you have to choose your word and then define it. So here's the example. This is actually pulled, these little boxes are going to be pulled out of the actual contract. This agreement made effective the 26th day of May 2015 between the sample business referred to as the client and your business name referred to as the designer. So you're just setting it up. The reason you do that is that way you don't have to repeat your name every single time. You're just saying designer does this, client does this, venue does this, performer does this. Definitions. Let's see here, recitals. I mean, I don't know, is this is typical recitals? Is this, I don't even know what that means, recitals, but I keep it in there because it's like I put what's the goal in my project, that I have in exhibits, and that under these terms, this is going to be our agreement. It's kind of very formal.
Yeah, usually you have, well, there's a couple of different kind of contracts you'll see. One is an old-fashioned kind of contract, which I sometimes draft but prefer not to, and they have what they call a whereas clause. So those are kind of the recitals, whereas this, that's the old-fashioned. A more modern one's not going to have that wording, and there's other wording that's in the more old-fashioned ones too. But you just kind of want to set up, why are we doing this? Like Sonia said, first, who are we? Who am I? Who are you? And then, why are we doing this? I have a certain expertise, maybe. I'm a web designer, and you desire to have, your web page designed. And then you go through, how are we going to do it? And what are the expectations and the terms and everything? That's probably next.
Let's see. Project details. Okay, so then I switched because what happened is on my contract, I stated really early on that I mentioned that the details of the project will be mentioned in Exhibit A. So I'm switching back to the other document, the Exhibit A currently. Okay, so think about the contract, but we're referencing. In the Exhibit A, what I include in that is these are the real specific things. The objectives for me, the target audience, okay, and design. You got to have who are you working for? What is the are they 18 to 35? Are they, people that are going to retire? Are they people that are in high school? Who are these people? Very important things. This kind of helps me kind of stay focused on what I'm working on. What creative direction I'm supposed to go in. The content, so I won't go into I won't say like obviously all the content of the website, but I'll specifically list out the pages that I'm making. So if there's 7 pages on this website, I list the 7 pages because that's one way that you can get a lot of feature creep. Okay, does everybody know what feature creep is? Okay, we want to do 7 pages, but then all of a sudden we're thinking we want to add this other page. But then if we add that page, we can add this page. And if we add that page, now we can add this third. Next thing you know, you're a 15-page website instead of 7. Okay, you don't want feature creep unless you do the change orders. So unless you state what you're supposed to be understanding, you're supposed to be making, there's no way to tell if you have feature creep. So list it out. Okay, I'm making these 7 pages. I'm doing these 3 illustrations. And it's clear. And then, of course, I include the scheduled details. Yeah, and I'll show you an example of this thing, too, in just a second. Okay. I don't know, general provisions. That sounds like kind of like war. I think of war. Basically, I'm going to do a good job. I'm going to do the best I can, the best of my ability, and I'm going to stay on the schedule. So again, this is helping them know, what is your designer, what are you doing? Artist, what are you doing? Again, I don't know. Do you need to have this? I don't know. I'm going to perform in a diligent manner. I mean, if you were hiring me, wouldn't you want to know that I was going to perform in a diligent manner for you? So, yeah. Okay, so this starts to kind of get into real specifics about graphic design. Again, it could be still related to you. You might need to hire a video person. You might need to hire a photographer. You might need to hire a graphic designer. So I just talk about specifically about who I'm consultants, people that I'm working with. What are the basic services? Talk about that I could provide change orders. That I'm going to need all that material up front. So see, this is where that's in there. I'm going to need the art. I'm going to need your content. The other really key thing here, which I really wish I would have underlined, exclamation pointed that, but the designated contact. So one thing we really teach at New Design School, which is super important, is that there's one person, a single individual that is your contact. Now that doesn't mean there's a board and 15 people and 25 people at the organization, but they all have to come together to person Susie Fisher, and Susie Fisher then comes to you. Otherwise you're going to go bazonkers. If you have 25 people emailing you, it's bad. You'll hate it. You'll go work at Hardee's or something. And so it's just going to be bad. It's going to be a bad situation. It's going to be hard. You're not going to want to do contract work. So I tell them, pick one person. They don't have to be the decision maker. They just have to communicate to me. That's from learning the hard way, really. Everybody knows design by committee is design that's, has anybody heard that? Okay. If you don't know the last word, that's okay. I can tell you later. Okay. All right. Let's see. Oh, and then B. So I actually have an A and a B that I refer to. In B, I take that chance to tell them what kind of file formats I need. Tell them whatever you need or how you want it, delivered. So I give them my email and I say, I need it in this file format, which you'd think it's not a really big deal. People send you crazy files. And you're like, I don't have that software, dude. What am I supposed to do? It's not my responsibility. Okay, well, it should be in the contract, right? Adobe Illustrator, a vector file, JPEG, okay? You'll see it. And If the brochure all of a sudden needs a plan of the 3-story apartment building layout, then that's additional work, okay? For me to sit there and do an architectural rendering of the layout of their apartment buildings, that's a whole nother project, y'all. Okay, so anything that you have seen in the past where you're like, that's a whole nother project, I just list them out. I just say plans, maps. A lot of times people say, well, can you just throw a little map in there? No, I can't throw a little map in there. Have you ever made a map before? It's hard. It's a lot of work. Good maps are a good amount of work. That's extra. Even if it's 2 or 3 hours extra, it's more time. Okay. Okay, so this is important. Where's the estimated cost? Again, the sections don't really matter. It's just that you include the content. This is where I put the money. Show me the money. Okay, so you can see I spell it out. Okay, judge, $1,280. Is that clear? Okay, if it's not clear, I also put it in parentheses for you. 16 hours, $80 an hour, blah, blah, blah. And if you need some more work, $80 an hour. And also this will include any reimbursable expenses, which we come to later. What constitute a significant change to the project? Basically anything that wasn't written in Exhibit A. That's what I decide. But it is a choice. I mean, I can choose. So they're like, well, you know what, we kind of think we might need a little editing on that one photo. I actually tell them, if you want to edit photos, you need to provide them to me already edited, unless I need to include that in my estimate. If you need to, most photographers give you like print-ready images. Most photographers do that. A good photographer, all the photographers I've ever worked with do. They're ready to drop in, unless I need to crop it a little or something. So I don't do that. That's actually mostly photographer's work. But if I have to do a tiny bit of that, I'm like, not a big deal. I can crop it. It'll be fine. But if they're saying, well, you know what, we actually want to add 2 dogs and a family over here, okay, that's a significant change. So it's kind of up to you, whatever you think. If it takes you a long time, then make a change order.
Yeah, I think the things that you're talking about, they're all, good things that are important to you, and so you need to define them and put them in there so that the other person knows if you make these changes, you pay more money, right, or it delays the project or whatever the situation is.
Which is why it's so important to, at the beginning, very clearly state what the project is. Because if you don't have that stated, then you don't know if you're veering off. So it's a lot of work up front. You'll get faster at it though. I can usually crank out a contract and an exhibit in about 30 minutes. You should know that contract backwards and forward and just fill in the information, copy, paste your bullets, send it off. Because that's time you're not getting paid for yet. Really, you haven't gotten paid yet. So, this is all your valuable free time so far. You haven't seen the money's not in the bank yet. The change order itself, we talked a little bit about this in the last one. So, I include travel. If I have to go to Little Rock, if I have to stay in a hotel, if I have to send a telegram, nobody sends telegrams, but I don't know. I didn't change some stuff that was in there. 50 cents a mile. That's probably really low now, but I think I kept that in there because I was working with government entity at one point, and that was their number at some point. I need to probably update it. So I think I just kept that in there.
Some people have like an amount. Basically, it's an IRS approved amount. I think it's 54 cents now or something like that.
I'm putting 54 in there.
Yeah, you can look on the internet and see.
How are they going to pay you? Bank draft, PayPal, whatever. Put it in there. If they don't pay on time, then how much is the late fee? A lot of people, and I looked it up, kept on looking, like how much do I charge for late fees? Just charge whatever you think. a flat $500. I don't know. You know, obviously some people are going to be like, I don't know about this. I don't want to be late. Well, they're not going to probably ever pay late, you know, but I think I put like on mine 10% after 30 days, 20% after 60 days, after 90 days it goes to collections or something like that. I don't. Most people love to pay up front. Like, just pay their half, they bring you the check, they're like, yay, it's done. But that's because you're being super professional, you know, from the get-go, and they're like, this person is like business. This is another specific thing. I don't know. I mean, I guess this could apply to a lot of people. What happens if we end the project? What if they're like, you know what, we actually decided we're not going to finish this project? What happens? So just tell them what you want to happen. I say, I'm like, that's fine. I have a lot of other things I need to be doing anyway. Some people do a kill fee, a flat fee of whatever. I don't do that. I just say, I'm going to send you the time I've spent so far. I'll bill you for that, all my expenses, and then we'll call it done. So it's just fair, you know. But put whatever you think. I try to keep up with everything paper in case there's questions, in case it does have to go to court. Try to keep a very detailed timesheet. I keep, you know, any expenses that I'm spending. This is really key too. Okay, so they start sending you changes, but they're texting them to you. I don't want people to text me changes. I personally don't want that. I will go crazy. I want that in an email, and that way I have it all in one very organized place, or a person-to-person meeting. So, you know, basically, you know, how are we going to communicate? And then whenever they say they received it, or if they reply, then it's a notification that they received it. If I send an email and I never get a reply, there's no way to know if they received it. So the back and forth of saying, great, thanks, received it, we'll review. That's so important. It's important on my half, it's important on their half, so that we can know that it's not going into the ether, or nobody's ever gonna see it. Okay, ownership of work. My personal contract is work for hire. I don't really recommend that maybe necessarily for illustrators or photographers. Okay, so what work for hire means is whenever they pay for it in full, it's they're the owner. And I learned this from Debby, from the copyrights thing. So there's always the author. Okay, so I'm always and forever the author, created it. But the owner, then when they pay for it in full, they own it. So whenever they file the copyright, that's how they file it. Now, if you're an illustrator, I think you probably might want to be the owner and the author and license, unless they're going to pay full outright for full rights. But we're going to have a different one, which I'm really excited about copyrights and trademarks, patents. So that'll be a whole another workshop. But I don't want to say anything about work for hire or anything like that.
Most of the time, if you're working for like a big company or something, if you work for a company, a full-time employee of a company, everything you do is work for hire. So the company owns it, and they will have you sign over, you know, that they're going to own all the copyrights, the trademarks, the patents, and you're going to sign all the paperwork to make that happen. If you're an independent contractor, which is what you guys are, and you don't work, well, most of you guys are, I'm assuming. You don't work for those people, you're contracting with them. Then most of the time they want to own, you know, what you're doing, unless, like Sonia said, you can license it to them is a better way of doing it. It gets complicated as to exactly what they're doing, what you're doing. They want as many rights, most companies will want as many rights as they can get.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point for me to license somebody's website. I mean, a website is that company's website, so there's only one. I can't like sell 12 of the same website or the 12 of the same logo. So for graphic designers, it doesn't make it work for hire works great. As again, the key thing, when they pay the full amount, they own it. Now, if they only paid half and they ran away, I'm the owner. And if I see them using it, you better believe they're going to get a letter from my attorney that says, cease and desist. You did not pay for that. You do not own that. You can send the rest of the money, and then we can talk about ownership. So that's how that works.
I think one of the problems could be, like, if you're a photographer and you're taking pictures for somebody else and they're paying you for those pictures, then can you use those pictures for anything else? Well, if it's considered work for hire, then no. That person owns those pictures, and you can negotiate some things possibly about that, but you wouldn't be able to kind of like double dip and sell those pictures to somebody else, or even use them for yourself if you're making money off of it.
Right. Which, by the way, I think it's not in this slide. I think I added it later, but I do have a clause in there that I can use all work for marketing materials, like my portfolio. Obviously, if they make you sign a non-disclosure NDA, you can't. You shouldn't. Don't even ask them. So I put in there, unless there's an NDA. And obviously it's case by case basis. If it's I just don't even put it on my portfolio. But I do put in there, we want to use this for marketing purposes for our portfolio. Same thing, subcontractors. How's that going to work if you're working with other people? Oh, really important thing, especially for graphic designers, are I'm trying to think. I guess if you're an illustrator, I don't know. For a musician, I'm not sure. Could there be a chance where your client wants you to use something that's not owned by you, but then the NFL team finds out that you're using a photo of their player without the permission? Okay, so basically, a way I say it is, if it's provided to me, then I am not liable. I'm not responsible for the content that is out there. Now, it's still a smart designer thing to do to say, did you ask the NFL if you could use this image? Did you download this from Google? And, they have to be educated. Like, these people, a lot of times, they just don't know. And so I have that in there. They should have the rights to information.
If they tell you that they do and they don't really, then they're liable?
They're liable in my contract. Yeah, I'm not liable. All content provided to me, that's why this is in there. Then they gave it to me, they provided it to me, and I put it up, and in fact, I will have an email too. I will say, hey, I don't know about this image. I better get an email. We actually have permission to use that image. I'm going to take that to court. They said they had permission to use this. So that's it.
Yeah, you can do what you do and say you're not liable. Or you can take another approach. Sometimes you just see where it says whoever they are guarantees that they have the rights to use this, which is the same thing, only in a coming at it a different way.
Mm-hmm. The other way I'll get it too, a lot of times I work with things that I get from the Shiloh Museum, and they have, like, for educational materials, they have a credit line. They have who the photographer was, and so I have to include all of that. And they send an email. It's very formal, super helpful. So you can see how people who are concerned about that, how they're handling it, you can kind of go, okay, this is how it should be handled. Not just like, oh yeah, well, that's fine. When is the end of the project? Because this stuff can go on and on and on. So I just say, when you pay me that last amount, that project's done. We're done. Oh, we need a PDF and okay, that's a new project. Because that stuff just goes on. You're like, stop. Okay. So designer and client responsibilities. I say client's liable for the provided content. We're both liable to make sure it gets completed. Designers, consultants are liable to the designer. So anybody I hire, that's between us, not between the client. So it's like you're just setting up all who's going to get in trouble if something doesn't go right. Okay, that's all that is. All the state laws apply. I think most contracts have that. State laws apply. Sign and date. with all your contact information.
I really want to thank Sonia and Debbie for partnering with the Creative Arts Network tonight, Fayetteville Underground for hosting us, and FPTV for recording tonight's workshop. You'll be able to find this presentation along with any materials that were presented, so all of the sample contracts that Sonia referenced, and a few more are actually on our website, nwacan.org/contracts, and that'll get you there. And thanks again to you all for being here, and I hope you have a really great night.